comedy is a gift. Don't be a selfish heifer, Niecy. I mean, that's how it spoke to me. I don't know. It said, don't be a selfish heifer. Go outside and spread it around. So I went outside and I said, hey, industry, my name is Niecy Nash and I'm funny. And they were like, and yes, you are, little girl. Get on over here and let us put you to work.
Hello and welcome to My Hollywood Story. I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt. My guest today is Niecy Nash-Betts, the star and producer of the FX series Grotesquerie. I've been a fan of Niecy since her breakout role as Renisha Williams on the improv comedy Reno 911. But her work in the last decade suggests she may be one of the most compelling dramatic actors of her generation. Through a mix of tears and fits of laughs, many of them mine, Niecy recounts her unlikely journey from young mother of three to giving what became a legendary 2024 Emmy acceptance speech for her work in Ryan Murphy's Dahmer Monster. She also reveals to me how her spouse Jessica most keeps her grounded. She also tells me how it felt when Meghan Trainor dedicated a song to her, and what the most surprising thing is to her about acting alongside Kim Kardashian. My Hollywood Story is sponsored by Mattel Films and recorded at Neue House Hollywood. If you like what you hear, give us a follow, leave a review, and let us know what you think. Please welcome my special guest, Niecy Nash-Betts. Come on out, Niecy. Hello, my dear. How are you?
Hello, everyone.
So nice to have you here. I can tell you already have a lot of adoring fans here to see you and hear your story. So happy for all of your success. And most recently, Grotesquerie on FX. Wow. How many people have seen Grotesquerie so far? Okay. So it'd be hard to avoid spoilers with talking about this show. I'll do my best, but there is like a major twist that we will talk about later.
Okay.
But how has it felt for you to promote this show, which I know you poured your heart and soul into?
I have to say, I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. But Grotesquerie is probably my favorite work to date because it taught me so many things about my art. Like I met myself in a different way doing that particular job. So promoting it just feels like, you going to your baby's graduation. You know what I mean? It's very much given. Oh, look at her. There she go. So I love talking about it. Promoting it is very easy because I'm obsessed with Lois Tryon.
I love that. I cannot wait to talk about Lois with you. But before that, we have many years of incredible work to talk about before then. Oh. And your Hollywood story begins right here in Los Angeles. Tell me where you were born and where you first lived as a child.
I was born in South Central. I'm a LA baby for real.
Obviously, you had predilections for performing when you were young. And I know you had a very momentous epiphany when you were 5 and you saw an actress on television. Yes. You told me this story a couple years ago, Lola Falana. Uh-huh. What did you see in that moment reflected back to you? Even at age 5, what did it mean to see her on television?
She was gorgeous. What you mean? She was just a star personified. In that one moment, I'm watching TV with my grandmother, and we watched the stories. Some of y'all don't know about the stories. You too young. Soap operas. I put my chips down. I feel like my eyes crossed, and in that moment, God stamped on the canvas of my imagination my destiny. She just was a star. She was singing and whatever she was doing, I just was, and I had seen black people on TV, but they didn't look like that. In my little 5 years of living, that was the most gorgeous woman I had ever seen on TV. And I looked at my grandmother, I said, who is that? She said, baby, that's Lola Falana. And I said, that's what I want to be. Black, fabulous, and on TV.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Here you are. I'd like to say a very special thank you to Neue House for being the exclusive venue partner of My Hollywood Story. Neue House is a gorgeous private work and social space for creators, innovators, and thought leaders to connect in Los Angeles and New York. As a Neue House member myself, I can tell you firsthand how amazing it is to work inside such iconic, beautifully designed buildings, while also enjoying elevated hospitality and thought-provoking cultural experiences. To me, Neue House has completely redefined the ideal environment for creative potential and progress. To learn more and apply for membership, visit neuehouse.com.
Did you start to take acting lessons? Did you have people in your life cultivating this interest for you, whether were your family, teachers, community leaders in your life saying, hey, you're talented, I want to make sure you have these opportunities?
Okay, so let me tell you this. I was shy as a kid, and yet I could still say with my whole chest that I wanted to be an actor. And my mother would be like, that girl's so shy, she ain't gonna do nothing. That girl just so shy. And I had one aunt that used to say, Margaret Ann, that girl gonna be something. You know what I'm saying? All it takes is one. You know, and my aunt Shirley, rest her soul, she always said, that girl gonna be something. And, oh, that just, Sometimes that encouragement that you are looking for may not come where you're looking for it to come from. But if it's the call on your life, God will always send somebody.
Thank you for sharing that.
For sure. So my aunt always said, like, I feel like she's gonna do something. She's gonna be something. And I forgot what's the rest of the question.
That's okay.
Can I get a Kleenex?
You certainly can. No, and you pretty much answered my question, which is, did you have people in your life motivating you? Because we all have dreams.
Sure.
We don't often
Sure.
articulate them and share them with people.
Right.
I had a dream to do a show like this my whole life. I kept it to myself because I thought, who am I? Who am I to be doing something?
Right.
So all it takes is people in our lives to say, you can do this. You may not think you can, but
Yeah.
it sounds like for you, your aunt ignited in you that confidence to pursue something.
Yeah, but first of all, let me just say, and while I really do appreciate it, I've always just lived in a way where I don't need anybody to believe anything that I want to do. And that's why it's not called mama esteem and them esteem and us esteem, because don't nobody got to believe it but you. But if people tap in, it gives you that little extra boost. But I don't need you to do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna do it. And my mother had never seen me do anything because she had to work 2 jobs. And you know, when you growing up in high school, you doing plays, you doing this and that. My mother had to work. And then I entered this acting competition, and they said that, you know, this is the thing that you can represent the state of California if you win. So my mama took off work. She said, now wait a minute. And you know, and after she saw me in that performance, she very much was like, how can I help you?
And what was this performance?
Oh, now you asking hard questions.
Wait, what age was this? High school or?
High school.
Okay.
Yeah, high school, you know, and
Like a play or a musical?
It was thank you. For the people who are listening, she's dabbing her tears. Yeah, so I was in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your mom was able to see you perform that
And
day?
she said, that girl, nah, I didn't know. You know, and she said, that girl is good. And and then after that, she helped in the way she could, because I come from a family where nobody was in entertainment professionally. My great-grandmother used to throw parties on Friday nights where she would get up and do crazy stuff. You know, sing, throw her voice, do a comedy bit. They would fry fish and it, you know, but that's just in your home. You don't understand that you could be doing this out in the world. So, you know, once my mother saw that, then it was, girl, you just like Lorraine. That's my great-grandmother. Ain't this baby like Lorraine? You know, and so then after that, she helped in the ways that she could. You have a show and y'all are in rehearsals, I'm gonna come up there and bring food. You know what I mean? You want me to fry some chicken? Yes, mama, please, and bring it up there. You know what I mean? Or you gotta sell tickets, because you know I could take them up to my job. And you're like, oh, you know what I mean? So you support in the ways that you can. But
Ultimate acts of love.
yeah, you know, but she had in the beginning was said, I don't know about this career because I can't help you.
Like she didn't have an example of it maybe to refer to in your family.
We don't know anybody in entertainment. Why don't you be a nurse? You kind-hearted. I'm like, now I got to clean bedpans because you don't believe what I want to do for a living? I think not. You know, but we on the same page now. Okay, we on the same page now.
And did you pursue formal training at some point with an acting coach or a teacher?
Because so sometimes you have to start where you are. So I could not afford that in the beginning. So in the beginning, I would watch people who I liked on TV, memorize the words, and go stand in the mirror and see how close I can get to it and what's my own sauce I can add to it. They did this, but I don't want to do that. So I just studied people on TV that to this day, I know every line that D had on What's Happening. To this day, oh, Raj, I'm going to tell mama. You know, so you know what I mean? I did what I could do.
And for those who are too young to remember What's Happening, please check this out on YouTube.
Yeah, follow up. Get into it, guys. So I was doing that at first. And then I went to college and took classes in college, you know.
Where was this? So you attended school?
Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. And then I went to, but I started off at a 2-year first, El Camino College. But I always took a theater class or an acting class or something, you know, and that was kind of my way. And then when I found my way in comedy, it was an accident because I was born funny. I've been funny my whole life, but I didn't know it was a gift because I got pinched in church. I got, you know what I mean, put on punishment. I had talks too much on my report card. My mother said, well, what was you talking about? And I said, I was in there telling jokes. She like, go get the belt. I got a joke, you know. So I didn't know comedy was a thing. And I wanted to be this dramatic actress. You know, that's how I originally saw it. But everywhere I went in this town, they were like, oh, you're so funny. And I would be seething. I'm like, funny is not a thing. And then my brother was murdered in 99. I'm sorry. He was murdered in 93. And thank you. And my mother went in a depression. And she said, I'm getting into bed and I'm never getting back out. And the only thing I knew for a fact was that I could make my mama laugh. I didn't know what to do about, you know, I was young. He was killed the day before my 22nd or 23rd birthday. And so I started officially standing in that as a gift to nurse my mother back to health. So I would perform at the foot of her bed every day. You know, she went from laying down to sitting up. Well, I got my peanuts and my water.
And what were you performing for her?
Oh, honey, everything. Bits, you know, antics, shenanigans. All of it, doing characters. And one day I came over there to do my act. And my mama, I hit that corner and she wasn't in the bed. I said, well, no, she not. Mama? She said, we're in here. I said, who is we? I went across the street and got the neighbors, and I told them you was funny. Get that karaoke microphone and get up here and tell these people some jokes. And I was like, is this thing on? And it was like, some old little microphone she found. Someone said, how's everybody doing in the living room? I'm like, what is happening? And I'm telling you something. It was in that moment when I saw my mama laughing and elbowing the Miss Brown across the street, I said something audible as I hear my own voice right now, said, comedy is a gift. Don't be a selfish heifer, Niecy. I mean, that's how it spoke to me. I don't know. It said, don't be a selfish heifer. Go outside and spread it around. So I went outside and I said, hey, industry, my name is Niecy Nash and I'm funny. And they were like, and yes, you are, little girl. Get on over here and let us put you to work. So it didn't happen the way.
So you were sort of fighting that for a little while.
I just wasn't fighting it. I just didn't lean in because I didn't know it was anything.
You didn't know it was a gift, not just for your family, but just in general.
No.
This is not a natural thing for people.
No.
Right.
And now that I know, look out. You don't want to sit next to me at a funeral.
I think we're getting a sense of what that might be
there
like.
sniggling and kikiing, baby.
So I want to talk about your first on-screen credit, 30 years ago, 1995's Boys on the Side, directed by Herb Ross. In his final film, actually, he had also directed Steel Magnolias. And you played, quote, woman
in the diner.
That's right, woman in the diner.
Hey!
And not just a background artist. You actually had a few lines of dialogue with
Whoopi Goldberg.
That's right. What an audacious debut. So tell me how you got cast, and what was it like to work with Whoopi in your first movie?
I went to one of the, I don't know if they still do them, but like where you can go to these workshops and then you audition for like somebody in casting or whatever. The guy said that I was talented, and he said I was funny. And I said, thank you or whatever. Didn't think nothing else of it. And I was playing this terrible game of breakup to make up with my first husband. So on one of my breakups, I was like, I'm out of here. And I had my baby on my hip. He said, well, what you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna act. No agent, no manager, no nothing. But, oh, well, that's what I said. And so say the thing if you want to see the thing. I'm trying to tell you. So I said the thing, and then I called the guy back who said I was talented. I said, I'm broke, I got a baby, and I need a job. And he said, be down here at 3 o'clock. I said, I'm on my way. I didn't know enough to be afraid. I didn't know enough to not pick up the phone. I just went with it. And I went down there and I had a picture of myself. And that's all I had. And then.
Like a headshot.
Yeah, headshot. Okay. And I did the audition, and it was a producer session. So the guy that I called, the casting director was in there, the director, the all the people, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, everybody is in there. And so, and it was like under 3 lines. I'm like, I got this. I went in there and I said the thing, and then the guy said, thank you. And I said, you welcome. And he was like, thank you. And I said, don't mention it. And he was like, thank you, you can go. I said, oh, I'm supposed to leave. I said, well, did y'all pick me? And he was like, what? I said, I got a baby at home. I told him. I said, you didn't tell these people that I called you and told you I need a job? I done broke up with this man. I'm just carrying on. And the guy, his face turned so red. And the director calls him over, and he's just looking at me like I'm gonna strangle this little girl. And he leans down and he goes, she's adorable. And look, I still don't know when to quit. I was like, no, because he said, we'll let you know when. And I'm like, but after he whispered to the guy's ear and I could hear him say, I'm adorable, I said, don't try to get on my good side now. I done drove all the way over here. And y'all not gonna I said, this is very rude. I don't even know why you do that. Why would you have somebody drive all the way over here? You see what I just said, all the words. And you're not gonna tell me if you're gonna give me the job. He said, sweetheart, you really gotta leave. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna leave, but guess what? I'm telling on all y'all. I'm gonna get, my mama said everybody got a manager. I'm gonna get the manager name of whatever this thing is y'all got. I mean, fussing. And then they called me. I went and convinced some lady I could do makeup. And I was working at the mall doing makeup, and they called my house, and my mother said, this is where she is. And when they called my house and said, can you, we want to offer you a part in this movie, but you need to fly to New York tomorrow. So I said, yep, okay. And they said, oh, and it's snowing. So, bring some thermals. I'm like, okay. So I hung up the phone in my bay, and I fell down on the ground and act like I fell out, I said, oh, Lord, I got to go. I became an actress right then. I said, I got to go. I don't feel good. And I went to a different mall and bought some thermals and almost missed my flight because when they said somebody will pick you up in the morning, I thought it was going to be, a guy named Michael in a Toyota Camry. I didn't know who was coming to pick me up. But there was a limo. That was right before they stopped using stretch limos, because now you get a black car. But then you got a whole long limousine. So me and my mom, I almost missed the flight because me and my mama stood in the door. She said, girl, Miss Brown gone. I said, I said, that lady was so nice, Mom. So we thinking that the woman is dead and the family finna come out and get in the car. And finally my mother said, well, I'm gonna go on over there and see what's going on. And then she, girl, this your ride. Get in the car, you gotta go. And I'm like, oh Lord. I get on the plane to go to New York to do the movie. And I did not know enough to know when I've been on a plane before, but I never sat in first class. I get on the plane, the lady says, and I'm just going this way. She goes, oh, no, you sit up here. I said, who, me? And I get in first class, and the lady came by and said, do you know what you like to eat for dinner? I said, yes. How much is the shrimp? She said, oh, baby. Baby, ask me today. Ask me today, I'm going to be ready. But, humble beginnings.
Oh my God, my stomach hurts. Okay. An audacious debut.
Yeah.
An entree to the business as well.
This episode of My Hollywood Story is brought to you by the Starz drama series Outlander. Katrina Balfe and Sam Heughan star in the romantic fantasy epic and long-running fan phenomenon. Outlander, for your Emmy consideration for Outstanding Drama Series and streaming now on the Starz app.
So I want to talk to you about Robert Altman, with whom you worked on Cookie's Fortune.
Yes.
With Julianne Moore, Glenn Close, your current co-star in your
Yes.
upcoming show. So Robert had a lot of quirks as a director. He liked improvisation, large ensemble casts, overlapping dialogue, often like a sense of chaos in his movies. What was it like to adjust to that style of filmmaking?
I just went with it, because when you have to tell somebody like a funny story or whatever, you start to think on your feet. So when he just said I had a crush on Courtney B. Vance, who's my first person I had to have a crush on in a movie, I just did what I would do. You know what I mean? And so I didn't really even think that much about it. I just was like, okay. So it's finding the thing that's not on the page. You know what I mean? I could, look at a character that I'm supposed to like, and if my line is, oh, wow, you look really nice, I could say, oh, wow, you look really nice. Or I could be like, oh, wow. Let them see what I'm working with. I was just finding ways to...
And also, he's giving you the freedom to do that.
To do it,
right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, when you got the role in Reno 911, and by the way, let's give Reno 911 a round of applause. You have said that you didn't have improv experience in the comedy context, although what you've just described to me is that you did. You just hadn't done it in that sort of LA comedy improv
I had
context.
never heard of Groundlings. I had never heard of Second City. I had never heard of an improv troupe. But when they say, can you do sketch and this, that, and the third, I just lied on the phone. It was like, yes. And then I called my friend Big George, and I was like, what the heck is sketch? Like, what do I have to do? And he told me, and I was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. You have to, I had been arguing with my ex-husband at that point for years. So I knew how to say stuff quick. Okay? And I was going to this time be able to use it for good and not evil. So.
And you've mentioned Big George to me in the past,
Yeah.
and I want to know, how big was Big George? And also, what did Big George do? I have this idea in my head of what Big George is and who this person was to you. So who was he?
Big George actually looks like a bouncer, but he's actually a correctional officer turned actor. So we met on a set of a movie. So he would, work at the prison and he would audition. That was the gig, and he's still my friend to this day. Some of y'all, I see somebody in here who was at my birthday hoedown. He was just at my birthday hoedown. We are still locked in. And after all these years, still locked in.
So without Big George, we may not have enjoyed you on Reno 911.
You may not have.
Thank you, Big George.
I mean? And let's talk about it, because when I got there, they were running late. And I knocked on the door and I was like, hey, what time is this bit gonna get going? And it was another producer session. And the woman said, why, are you in a hurry? Like, snappy. And I said, as a matter of fact, I am. I gotta take my kids to Chuck E. Cheese. And if I don't get there by 7 o'clock, it's gonna be hell to pay. And she said, what? I said, the last time I got there late, they jumped on the mouse. The head came off the man. He went in the back. I was like, I gotta go. I got things to do. You know, and so they let me come in and do it. And then I had my mama watch my kids, so when I got that call back, I was gonna be ready. Went to the dang gone call back, and I was like, I'm so ready, I'm focused. Soon as I walked in, what did they say? What happened at Chuck E. Cheese? I don't even know if I was the best girl. I just think I was the most comfortable in my skin, you know? And I didn't know enough to know that sometimes when you're doing characters and character work that you gotta workshop it. You gotta, I was just like, I could do the same thing I did for y'all last time, but I found this handkerchief in the back of my car and I made up something on the way called Carol the Slave. Y'all wanna see that? And they were like, we're begging you to do it. I'm like, okay. And that was kind of, and I've been playing Rhanisha Williams for over 20 years now.
Yes, thank goodness, thank goodness. So you did 2 projects with one of my favorite comedians who's no longer with us, Bernie Mac.
Oh, yes.
The Bernie Mac Show and the movie Guess Who.
Yes.
I love Bernie Mac so much. I was revisiting the Bernie Mac Show, which aired from 2003 to 2005, created by Larry Wilmore. Loved the show. What do you think was special about Bernie's approach to funny? He has such a unique tone and such a unique vibe.
I think it was the same on camera as off, his generosity. He was such a generous person. And when I booked the role to play his sister, he said to me, I got mine. You get yours. Do you, and I'll follow. So he wasn't selfish with the laughs, with the spotlight, with any of it. He's like, it's the Bernie Mac show. Like, so get what you came for, and tell me how I can help you with that.
Not always the case.
Oh,
you walk
heck
into
no.
it set.
Are you
Especially
kidding
when
me?
the person's name is in the title of the show.
I seen it firsthand. I know exactly what you mean. So he was not that.
We miss him a lot. What a special guy. So you'd work with another king of comedy from the King of Comedy tour a few years later in The Soul Man, Cedric the Entertainer.
I played his wife.
You played his wife. And this was a multicam format show on TV Land. And I wanted to know what you enjoyed about the multicam experience. It's very much like live theater.
Yep.
You have the audience reaction immediately. You hear if something works immediately, and then you also hear when it doesn't. What did you enjoy about being able to flex those muscles?
Well, in whole, I like several things about it. I like that you work half the time of a 1 hour and make the same money. You know what I mean? Like, we gonna keep it real. It's real cute. You get off of work every day by 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? You can go to brunch, you can go to dinner, you can pick your kids up.
You can
from
go
school.
to Chuck E. Cheese.
You can go to Chuck E. Cheese. Come on. I love that part of it. Then the part of it that's the live element, when you have the tape days, is always so fun because, you know, you just getting that feedback and that instant energy from the audience is bomb. Like, I just loved it so much. And Cedric is so kind. He's one of the most kind people I've ever worked with. And so, you know, it always just felt like a good time. You know, you do a table read on Monday. Table read is over by 10, 11 o'clock. We already drinking mimosas. I mean, like, it's crazy. It was just great.
So around this time, you had an experience which for me feels like one of your biggest artistic swings. You shared a story with me a couple years ago about Getting On and how you were cast in the show Getting On HBO. And you said something to me in this conversation I've never forgotten, which was, quote, I invite you to see me differently.
Well, I was doing a lot of comedies, but the original seed that was planted in me to do drama or more grounded work never left. So I had a team meeting, agent, manager, whomever, and they were like, hey, what's going on? What are we doing here? And I said, well, I came because I wanted to reintroduce myself to you guys, because I think you know me. But I done changed. Things have changed. And this is what I want. And if you don't see me the way I see myself, then that means we're no longer aligned. And I'm okay with that, but let's just know what we doing. You know what I mean? Because if you don't see me like I see me, we're not going to make it. And, you know, that one got off the team. This one came on the team. That one left. They switched roles so that we could get it right. Then that ultimately led me to audition for Getting On, which was a very small show on HBO. And when I say small, I don't mean like loud, like Ballers and Boardwalk Empire.
Based on a BBC series centered on nurses and doctors caring for elderly patients. So this was the American version of that show.
Right. And do we have any actors in here?
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's talk about owning your audition for a second. Because when I went in, they told me the role I was going to read for. And it was the same role that Alex Borstein was her character that she ended up getting cast in, but I was reading for that part. First thing I did when I got that script, I wasn't selfish. I called every girl I knew in town who came to mind when I read the thing, and I said, they got this thing, make sure you get somebody, you know what I mean? Because reciprocity in life is real, right? So then somebody is gonna call me when it's something. So I just didn't want to. And my daughter, she said, I don't know why you telling all these people and somebody going to go and get your job. I said, well, first of all, little girl, put your finger down. And second of all, nobody can do what I'm called to do. If it's my job, it was my job from the beginning of time, before the foundation of the world. But if it's not my job, how wonderful is it that I could be a conduit to one of my friends booking it? You see what I'm saying? So I said that there's no way to lose. But when I read the words, it was another character that just kept coming up for me. And she didn't even talk that much in the beginning. It's just her facial expressions. I could just imagine her in my mind. I never watched the BBC version. I just was like, wow, I love this character. So when I go in and I get a call back, they said the director wants to speak to you. But he has a very thick accent. And I just kept going, And then I got off the phone and I cried like a dog. And I said, I know, somebody who was standing there with me said, don't cry, you can do it. I said, I know I could do it, but what is it? I don't know what the man said. But when I went back for the call back, I said, hey guys, since I'm here, is it okay if I read for this other character? And they said, absolutely not. I said, oh. They said in the BBC version, this is a 60-year-old white woman who plays that part. And I said, okay, well, let me just tell you the reasons why I love the character. And I started talking about the character, the woman, the scene, this, and when she did this, and when she did that. And they said, well, if you love it so much, do you want to come back on Friday? And I said, no, sir, I don't. I'm here right now. And he said, well, we don't even have the size for that part right now. I said, it's okay. I'm going to go out here and wait while somebody make it. Because I didn't want to give him a chance to change his mind. You know what I'm saying?
And had you rehearsed this part at all at this point?
No, I just kept reading it. Okay. I just thought it was
But Dee Dee resonated with you.
It just resonated with me. And they said that when I finished and I shut that door and closed it, they all looked at each other and was like, that's the girl. That's her part. And they chose me right then and there. And mind you, keep this in mind. Watch your mouth. Because what you say is so important. When I got ready to leave to go to the callback, I said to my mama, girl, you want to go with me? I said, I need somebody so I could get the carpool lane. She said, well, where you going? I said, I'm about to go get this job right quick. And guess what? She got that job right quick.
And 2 Emmy nominations as well.
Oh, girl, I cried like a dog when I got that Emmy nomination. Let me tell you something. I was on set, and the nominations come out so early in the morning. I wasn't even thinking about getting nominated for it. And who's even watching this tiny little show? You know, I wasn't even thinking about it. And so I went to get a coffee, and on the way back, one of the PAs said, congratulations, Miss Niecy. And I said, what? He said, I don't know. On the walkie-talkie, they said you won something. I said, was it that cheese basket? I love cheese. Oh, it was a raffle or something. I said, oh, I won the raffle. Didn't even know it. Came back and they started saying I got nominated for an Emmy. I could not stop crying. And let me just tell you about this business. They're not going to wait for you. And I don't care what. When I say bawling my eyes out, feeling that whole moment. I've waited my life for this was my inner monologue, right? I was crying so bad. The producers came over and said, baby, we need to make the day. We understand that you feel like this. It's not our first rodeo. You're going to have to fix your face and get back in there. You know what I mean? Divorcing husbands on set in my trailer like, ah. And they're like, Niecy, they're ready for you. And I'm like, you know, it does not wait for you. And it's not going to be kind. You know, you just got to pull up and push through in spite of what life is happening. That was a sidebar. I threw that in for free. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I'd like to segue talking about your collaborations with Ava DuVernay, the wonderful Ava. And you've worked with her, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 times, Selma, When They See Us, and Origin.
I can't get enough.
That's
still not enough.
You were wonderful in all of those projects. But I do want to talk about When They See Us, because it is just a stunning piece of storytelling.
Thank you.
Your performance as well. And of course, you played Dolores Wise, the mother of Corey Wise. And Corey was 16 when he was wrongfully arrested and sent to Rikers, while the other kids of the Central Park Five were placed in juvenile detention centers. Mm-hmm. Corey spent 12 years in prison, the longest sentence of all of the men.
Yeah.
And I revisited this show recently, and wow, it's even more painful to watch now for a myriad reasons. But I wanted to know how this project informed your work with the Innocence Project and how all of this has changed your life and the way you see art as activism. Because not everything you do is activism, but this particular piece for me feels like a very powerful tool. So tell me about that.
I grew up being obsessed with justice. Like, you know what I mean? I was the referee, the arbitrator, on the mediator on the playground. Now, how many pieces of candy did you give her? And how, you know, all of that. You know, you come talk to me. I'm gonna get it straightened out.
Like fairness was important.
I loved it. I would always draw pictures of myself as a judge. You know what I mean? Because I felt like I could look at you and tell if you lied. You know what I mean? I just always wanted just fairness and what is right, and has always been a thing for me. And I have been obsessed with their case prior to ever knowing Ava. I mean, this is 1,000 years ago when it was in the news and the media and all the things. And I literally, I text Ava, I sent her a DM, I called and left a message, tied 2 cans together with a string. I would have did anything. I said, listen, I have to be in this movie. I have to be a part of telling this story. You know, I don't care. I'll be anybody. I'll be the lady in the courtroom who just typing the thing down like, I'll be anybody. I just have to be in this movie. And she was like, I was like, I will audition. She sent me a message back. She said, audition? She said, are you crazy? You're gonna be Dolores Wise. You good with that? And I was like, I'm great with that, you know? And I loved being a part of it. I love the real men. I lovingly call them the exonerated 5, but I love them all. We fellowship, and you know what I mean? And they are still very near and dear to me.
They are so resilient and so inspiring, all of them. And Jarrell Jerome, who played your son, he won an Emmy for his performance.
He did.
How did that feel to see him on that stage that day?
Like I was his mama. I'm still his mama. You know, all the ones that come through and I get to play their mama, I keep them. I just been collecting kids along the way.
And how did it feel to see that story resonate so deeply with a new generation of young people who really had maybe heard of it, but weren't alive either in 1989 when this was in the papers every day?
It's just the power of art.
Right.
It's the power of art to teach, to inform, to inspire, to allow people to feel, to give information. Like it's just a powerful tool.
It is. I'd like to talk about your work with Mindy Kaling on Never Have I Ever. You played the therapist, Dr. Ryan. I love this role. Tell me about the feedback that you would get from young people from your appearances as the therapist in this show.
Girl, I was just in the parking lot at Pavilions, and a young baby came walking by. Are you Dr. Ryan? And I said, no, I'm Niecy Nash, but I played Dr. Ryan. And she was like, well, Girl, wait a minute. I just play a therapist on TV. Everybody relax. I said, where's your mama? You know, but the young people, they love Dr. Ryan. They love Dr. Ryan.
Well, what do you think was special about that character for young kids?
I just think that what I love about this generation is that therapy is not foreign. You know what I mean? That this new generation is more dialed into, as to where when I was little, if I had a problem, my mother wasn't taking me to no therapist. You know what I mean? She was like, well, you know what? Get your clothes ready to go to church Sunday. And that was going to solve it. You know what I mean? Or you don't have no problems. You're not paying no bills around here. What kind of problems you got? You know? So it's like a mentality where therapy was not welcome. And I love that for this new generation that, you know, it is...
it's not taboo.
It's not taboo anymore. And I love being a part of that. Like I said, art, inviting people to think differently, opening you up to another way of something. And some people have said that they only went to therapy because of Dr. Ryan. You know what I mean? And so I love that.
That is so beautiful. And now we come to one of your most important partnerships with Ryan Murphy. Yes, the man. And I believe you first worked together, is it true, in Popular 25 years ago?
25 years ago,
Okay.
I played
His
a
first
lobster in a dream sequence for Ryan Murphy. And I was used to going in and auditioning and seeing a group of people, like when you show up to sign in, that you don't know. And then you kind of get familiar, it's the same faces. But this was the first time I went and I auditioned for something and I recognized every girl in there. And I turned around and walked out.
Is it because you'd been doing so many auditions by that point? You started to get to know your competition?
Yeah, but it was girls you didn't know. You know what I mean? Keisha, who worked at the bank. You know what I mean? It was regular, and I don't want to say regular girls, unknown girls. So when I walked in and saw all the known girls, I had a panic attack. I'm like, how am I supposed to be in there with all those girls and they all been on TV? You know, to Tisha Campbell, Tashina Arnold, Essence Atkins. It was all the girls who were on all the sitcoms at the time. And that voice came back and said, if you believe that I am taking you where I showed you, then those women are your peers. Get back in there. And now I got all their phone number. You know what I mean? We hanging out. It's different now. But then, you know, I had that moment of, yeah, you're right. I'm supposed to be here. You know, and that was, and out of all of them, I'm the one that booked it, the one with the least amount of credit. So, you know what I mean? And so I'm just saying that to say you can be the less on paper, but the call on your life is the call on your life. You know what I mean? You just got to show up. So I showed up, and that was my first job with Ryan. And then after that, I think we did a show that never came out, pilot. But many years later, I turned up in Scream Queens.
Right.
And then after Scream Queens, Dahmer.
Of course, some very different tone, very different story.
Yes.
So Dahmer, Monster, of course, your Emmy-winning role, one of the most thrilling Emmy speeches in the history of television. And for those who may not remember, the rallying cry on that day, quote, and you know who I want to thank? I want to thank me for believing in me and for doing what they said I could not do. So I want to know, when you say doing what they said I could not do, who is they?
Well, they is the part of the industry. And I talked about this when I went backstage. You know, sometimes people want to leave you where they meet you. So it's like, oh no, we know what you do. You do broad comedy. We got your number. You know, and I was like, I can do more than that. You know, and I knew I could do it. I just needed an opportunity. And so that's the they. Because they said I could not do it. You know, and they said, like, that's not for you. You stay over here. And I was like, no. You know I can do it. You know, and yeah.
I think that was a validation that day. And also seeing your mom in the audience, how did she feel? What did you say to each other after that moment?
She said, girl, now y'all want to know the real. This is really what happened. I had worked so hard. I sat there and I look at my spouse is right here. My mom was right there. I said, let me tell you something right now. If these people don't call my name, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to spit on the ground, and I'm walking out. I look at my spouse and I say, what you going to do? She said, I'm gonna kick the cameraman. Yes. I look at my mama, what you gonna do? Everybody got an assignment, and we know when they say the name, if they don't say my name, it's up. It's up in here. And we was all, that's why we was all like, okay. Watch and see if they don't say it, what we gonna do. So I'm so glad they said it because.
I think we're all glad now that we heard that. I'm so relieved, my God. But when you actually talked to your mom after that.
Yeah, sorry.
What did she, and that was very entertaining, thank you. What is the first thing that she said to you?
Girl, I thank God I lived to see it. That's what she said. She said, I thank God he kept me alive long enough to see it. You know you a big deal. I said, girl, tell me again.
She's so sweet. I actually had a chance to meet her a couple years ago. She's an absolute doll.
Thank you.
It's very genetic, clearly. So you received the award from Marla Gibbs and Quinta Brunson. So I want to ask about that, this multi-generational sort of bookends of not only legendary comedy, but just these two formidable women at the top of their game. How did that feel to be part of that piece of history?
It was crazy because, like, you know, growing up, it was like almost like a space where you could go and you could do plays and you could take acting classes, and then after you perfected whatever your bit was, you could perform there. You can invite, you know, people to come see you do something. And we used to go there. I started off, you know, it was like in the inner city.
This was here in LA.
Yes. You know what I mean? And it was just full of like black and brown kids wanting to do something but really didn't have a means and a way, you know, to do it. She created this space for us. I loved it. I mean, so for her to be standing up there, I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Not only did I grow up watching you on the Jeffersons and 227, but I just love you for saying there needs to be room for these kids to express their art. So it was such a gift that it was her. So it was like, you know, the past and the present. Quinta is a genius. And I listen, and it was on MLK Day. Come on, somebody. It could not have been sweeter. I said, somebody up there loves me.
And that speech resonated so deeply with one particular singer, Meghan Trainor, that she decided to use I Want to Thank Me as the title of a song.
Somebody reached out to me and was like, Meghan Trainor wants your phone number. And I said, for what? And she wants to talk to you. In some kind of way, we got on the phone. She said, I was so inspired by the speech. I really want to, you know, make this song. Can I send it to you? I just, you know, I was playing around with it. Tell me what you think. I had just won that Emmy. I just got off the plane. We was just sitting there, and I just started crying. I said, somebody want to use my voice. And I did not know at the time that my spouse had already took a different portion of the speech and made a song. But the surprise was going to be at my birthday party. So I end up with 2 birthday parties because the first thing I said before I said I wanted to thank me, as soon as I got on the stage, I said, I'm a winner, baby. And my spouse made a song with my voice and all the things called Winner Baby. So I have Winner Baby and I Want to Thank Me based off that one speech.
That's more than most people have to document a win.
Yes, buy my music. I got to get the G in EGOT. Come on, y'all.
So you've mentioned Jessica a number of times, and I've had the pleasure of meeting her. She's really lovely. How crucial has her support been to you in the last few years?
So much of what I'm able to do it and enjoy it is because I'm with the right person. You know what I mean? Like, that's my person. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, my lungs, you know, are hooked up. You know what I mean? It's how, it's just like breathing. I mean, we are so connected. So, I mean, having someone to share all that with is great. But I also and with somebody who, when I wake up every day and God allows me to see another day, that one right there puts a battery in my back, you know, and it's like, talk your ish, you know who you are, you better, you know what I mean? And if I say anything negative about myself, she say, you better watch your mouth and what you say about my wife. I said, ooh. And then my clothes fall off, so.
You have shared stories about champagne and skinny dipping, by the way.
You know what? Let me tell you something. I did exactly what I said I was going to do even right after that Emmy. I found a hotel room that had an indoor pool in it. And we went skinny dipping and drank that champagne before I went home and got on that plane to go to Ireland. Yep, sure did.
You had a big night that night.
I had a great night.
So now we come to Grotesquerie, your Emmy contending role this season on FX, created by Robert Bates and Ryan Murphy.
Yep.
So let's talk about Lois.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't seen, I'm sorry, there will be some spoilers, but there is a really pivotal moment in episode 7 that reveals that your character has in fact been in a coma until then and not caring for her husband, who we thought was in the coma. So this is what I would call like a Sixth Sense twist, where everything we have seen, we are now revisiting. Mm-hmm. So I want to know how you felt when you came to that episode and you realized the twist. What was your emotional reaction to that moment?
Well, I read all 9 episodes before, just hadn't got to the season finale, but I had read all 9 before I even showed up on the scene. And I told Ryan, I want to play this lady. This is the one I want to do. And he was like, you know, there's so many other great characters in this. I was like, but I want to play that lady. You know, and I just knew that was what I was the most interested in. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be like an American Horror Story, but it's really not. It is really about a woman who is chasing a demon while she's battling her own. She's hunting a serial killer in the series. She's also an alcoholic. She has a troubled marriage. And what I thought was so delicious was doing something I had never done before. And it is not an easy feat to play a believable alcoholic, you know, and it's a lot of places to go in that disease. You know, you could be hammered, you could be hungover, you could be tipsy, you could be fiending for a drink. It's so many different places in it that you know you can land. And I just loved, and I felt like Ryan was just such a great partner, and the directors, Max Winkler, Alexis Woodall Martin, and all were so lovely at helping me stay on the train to know where I am in this scene versus where did I just come from. Let me go back and read. Did I have a hard night last night? Well, let me wake up like I've been through something. You know, whatever that was, we had to track it throughout this whole thing. And so she had to do her job, manage her illness. You know what I mean? She had an affair with her daughter's husband. She had a troubled relationship with her own husband. Just so many things that she was dealing with. I literally left Ryan a voice note the other day. I was in tears because I had never seen the behind the scenes footage that we shot. And just going back and listening to all the departments talk about it and myself talk about it, it brought tears to my eyes. I love that job so much. And I called him and I was like, this is one of the greatest gifts you have ever given me.
Wow. I talked to Matt Bomer last year about what Ryan sees in people in ways that they haven't been seen before. Sarah Paulson has also talked about this. In what ways do you think Ryan has seen something new in you that you appreciate?
I think that when you look at words on paper, or even if it has a character description, I feel like he's been able to see me in places that were probably, you know, have been reserved for white actresses. You understand what I'm saying? Because you think about Grotesquerie, if I had taken one of the secondary parts, then more than likely our lead would have been white.
Like Leslie Manville's role, were you being considered
or
for that?
whomever, any other woman that was in the bit, but I'm just saying. But having a black lead means now she got a black husband. She got a black daughter. Like, it changes the thing exponentially. And I think being able to see beyond the words on the paper and know that I trust this actor, this artist enough with these words to make it into something palpable, something memorable, something award worthy. You know, that's the gift that I feel like for me. I can't speak about how he sees other people, but I think for me, and it's a spread, because if you look at me on, did anybody in here see Scream Queens?
Sure, of course.
And you know, it was that damn Zayday Williams. You know, I'm just yelling and acting crazy and, Lord, it smelled like booty in here. You know what I'm saying? So many dumb, crazy, funny things that, and then you turn around and you play Glenda Cleveland, you know, in Dahmer. And it's like, well, you didn't know what happened now? You know, so he for me, he sees the range. You know what I mean?
But also, it's interesting you talk about your being cast also affects the other casting, having more black actors in the ensemble. He's so open that he's willing to sort of let the DNA of his stories shift based on who's right for the part. Right. I don't know a lot of show creators who are willing to see that cascading effect based on who gets the lead, and then you fill out the cast accordingly.
Sure.
A lot of creators have, no, it's just that person. That's who I imagine when I was writing.
Sure.
And he has a lot of openness, I think, on that front.
Yeah, a lot. Because at that time, he gave me like 3 or 4 script options, like pick any 2 of these. You know what I mean? And that was the one that I gravitated towards. And
it's a nice friend to have, by the way, giving you your own scripts to choose from.
Well, you know, when I got married to Jessica, he called me, and I said, yeah, you know, I had just was telling him, he was like, how's it going? And I said, yeah, I had somebody tell me, like, you can't tell people your personal business, because you should have left this behind a closed door, because if you do, you'll never eat lunch in this town again. I said, this town? I just want to make sure we talking about this town. I was like, okay. And so I just said that to him on the phone. He said, why would anyone say that to you? As long as I'm alive, you'll have a job in this town. And so that was so nice of him. I wasn't telling you that for you to say that. You just say, how's it going? And he was just like going to say to whoever said it to me, in your face, watch this, you know. And after we had that conversation, he said, I have this thing I want you to do. And I said, okay. I had already said okay and didn't know it was Dahmer. And I was just like, what?
What did I just agree to?
What did I just agree to? But yes, he has been a wonderful collaborator and friend.
And of course, football fans who have seen this show will probably wonder what it was like to work with Travis Kelce. You had a number of scenes with him. What surprised you about working with someone who was rather untested as an actor?
His availability to be coached. His, you know, he didn't show up like late. He was always on time. He always knew the lines, always prepared, you know. So he was like a true professional, you know. And I was like, that's half of it right there. You know what I mean? And then he was open to, if you said, you know, he was like, how can I make this better? What else should I try? You know, and so I love that. And he's just kind, greedy, but kind. He eats a lot, but he's very, very kind.
The ultimate team player, I imagine. So before we start to wrap up, I did want to talk about a show that I know meant a lot to you that didn't last longer than a season, which is The Rookie, Feds, and which I loved. I love the show spinoff of The Rookie, starring Nathan Fillion on ABC. And you were a producer and, of course, the star of the show. And I love what this show has to say about women giving themselves permission to pivot and to, again, see themselves differently, as this character did. Mm-hmm. And I imagine you were quite disappointed when this didn't go forward. Tell me what you took away from that experience that you've applied to your work moving forward.
I was devastated. I loved playing her so much, you know. I loved that she was in her second act. You know, she raised her children and then decided, I'm going to do all of this, but I'm going to make this cutoff to get into the FBI. and she was unconventional. She used all her wisdom as a mother and she had been a teacher to help catch the bad guy. I love that she was an equal opportunity lover. I had girlfriends, I had boyfriends, I had everything. And I said, ooh, I like her. And I also had the opportunity, one of my first love interests was actually my spouse. Got to come aboard and play Dina Jackson. And I love Bring Your Spouse to Work Day. Anytime,
you had great chemistry on screen.
And off. Yes, we do. But I loved that job so much. And I remember when I found out it wasn't going to go, I was in Miami. And JB had a performance, and I had to introduce her. And there was I don't know, I had to do something. And it was right before it was time for her to go on stage. And I got the call, and I just was devastated. And then she was like, she pulled me over in the corner. She said, listen, there is so much more for you. She gave me the pep talk. This is not this. You need to do this. You need to do that. And blah, 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 blah. And she gave me all the stiff talks, and this is what we going to do, and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't even realize it till she got to the end of the pep talk. And her voice cracked, and I was like, oh, you was on the show too. I'm so sorry.
So she was mourning her own acting career there.
I said, I'm so sorry. And she was like, yeah, thanks. I'm like, oh, boy. So we were both at this party I was hosting, she was performing, and we both had tears in the corner of our eyes. But we pushed through.
I'm sure it was very special to be able to work together.
Oh, yeah, always.
I have a feeling you will again.
Oh, we better.
You better. So coming up this fall, your next project with Ryan Murphy, All's Fair. I don't know if people have seen the teasers, but my first thought watching this teaser was, what is the glam and styling budget on this show? That was my first thought.
Girl, more than they paying all of us put together.
That's kind of how it seems. Kim Kardashian, Glenn Close, Sarah Paulson, Naomi Watts, Teyana Taylor, and you are also a producer on the show. Uh-huh. So this is a very different show from Dahmer, certainly from Scream Queens. What can you reveal to us about your character and tell us a little bit about the premise?
Well, the premise is women who have taken a step away from the patriarchy to start their own firm. So it's an all-women-run divorce firm in Los Angeles. And I play Emerald Green. She is the only one of our ladies that is a mother of 3. She had triplets by artificial insemination on her own. She said, I want kids, and I'm going to go get me some. And she has 3 children. She used to be a private investigator before she went to law school. And she is like the heartbeat, I would probably say, of the gang. You know what I mean? Kind of more, first of all, she's no nonsense. She doesn't take anything from anybody, but she's like a loving maternal nature. Maybe that's what I should say. She's has a very maternal nature about the girls.
And how has it been working with Kim, who's now the main actor in the show?
I love Kim. I mean, she's lovely. I have never seen anyone multitask the way she does.
She does seem to be good at that.
Let me tell you something. It's a baby on FaceTime, a law book in her lap. She running a business on a laptop. I mean, all of this is while we're on set. You know what I mean? And it's a wonder to see. You're like, how do you get all of this done in a day? You know, it's a lot. But she is definitely up for it. She definitely comes prepared. She brought her A game. And I think folks are going to be pleasantly surprised.
She's not messing around in whatever she does.
No.
And how has it felt to reunite with Glenn Close, your Cookies Fortune co-star? Did she remember you?
Let me tell you something. I don't know. She said she did, but I didn't believe it. But Glenn Close is so funny. And people think that, this woman she's the Glenn Close. She's poised. She's very pulled up. She comes to side. It's like, she will cuss you underneath the table. Like, people don't even understand. The gifts that she gives are so funny and cheeky. Like, she's just a good time. Now, we had the opportunity to we were all talking about Fatal Attraction, and Kim was like, well, what is that? And we looked at her like, who are you right now? So then we decided, okay, well, let's all get together and watch Fatal Attraction with Glenn Close. So we go over to Kris Jenner's house, and we're sitting there, and we're all in the movie room watching it, and my head was about to pop off. I said, Glenn Close is sitting right here, and that's her right there on the screen. And it was just like, and she had her popcorn, honey, and when Michael Douglas ripped that dress down and threw her up on that sink, we was all like, oh, Glenn, look at you, girl. And her boob popped out, and somebody sitting in there that said, oh my God, Glenn, is that your titty? And I looked down, and Glenn Close had a smile up to her ears. She said, yep, that's my titty. I said, I love you forever. That's my girl.
You have an amazing
Can
life.
you say titty on the podcast?
You
Sorry,
can say
y'all.
whatever you want.
Okay.
Well, I know I could sit here for 10 more hours hearing these stories, but we do have to wrap up. And
okay.
My closing question is a two-parter.
Okay.
The first one is, Niecy, what do you hope listeners of this podcast take away from your Hollywood story today?
I hope that listeners take away from my Hollywood story that there's a very big difference between a call on your life and a hobby. A hobby is something you do for fun, but throughout, from the time I was 5 years old, I have been manifesting everything that I have right now. And I hope that they know that whatever the call on their life is, you stick with it. Because between the time it reveals itself to you and the time it actually manifests the way you see it is the meantime. And the meantime is mean. It's mean. That's what's going to be able to let you know if you have the stick-to-itiveness to get to the end. You know what I mean? Parents dying, brother killed, this happened, that happened, you know, the divorce, the dog ate my homework, all the things to see if you have what it takes to get to the end. And I hope they stick with it, whatever it is.
I love that. And finally, what have you learned about yourself in sharing your story today?
What I learned about myself in sharing my story today is that, first of all, I need to call my therapist because because there are still places and, you know, pain and trauma. Even though you are on paper, you may be living your best life, or people look at you and think, oh my God, it's so shiny. You still have pain and trauma in the body that you are dealing with, you know what I mean? Which, you know, has to be addressed and has to be healed. So, you know what I mean? And so as soon as I get in the car, I'm calling Dr. Wetter, huh? See when I can get an appointment.
Well, on behalf of everyone here today, thank you so much for being here. We are so honored to have you.
Thank you.
My Hollywood Story is a production of Hippolyta Films and Entertainment. It is produced by me, Stacey Wilson Hunt, along with Sonia Slutsky and Wendy Green. Series producers also include Daryl Young and Janet Grayson. Our sound mixer is Luke Tierney, with camera by Ramiro Cantu. My Hollywood Story is edited by Nathaniel Wixon, with original music by Madi Gabriel and Jenny Carr of Moon and Star. Our logo design is by Brad Mitchell, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Champion Turf. My Hollywood Story is sponsored by Mattel Films and recorded at Neue House Hollywood. If you like what you hear, give us a follow, leave a review, and let us know what you think.